We're going on the video record for the deposition of Jeffrey Smith, MD. Today's date is March 7, 2024, and the time is approximately 2 p.m. Will counsel please introduce themselves?
Michael Rafey for the plaintiff.
Jack Hawkins here for the defendant.
Will the court reporter please swear in the witness?
Do you swear or affirm the following testimony will be the truth, nothing but the truth?
Yes, I do.
Good afternoon. Can you please state your name for the record?
Yes, Jeffrey, Geoffrey, Smith, Smith.
And are you a medical doctor?
Yes, I am.
And Dr. Smith, what do you do for a living?
I'm a forensic pathologist. I guess the colloquial term would be a medical examiner, but I guess the formal title would be forensic pathologist, which is a physician with specialty training in the performance of autopsies to determine the cause of death in a variety of situations. The majority of the work that I do is mandated by law, the Georgia Death Investigation Act, which stipulates what says that certain cases need to be investigated by the medico-legal official, and certain counties in Georgia have medical examiner systems. The majority of the counties in Georgia have elected coroners. My job has involved being in a medical examiner's office as a medical examiner, and also in a medical examiner's office such as the one we're in at the moment, which is the Georgia Bureau of Investigation State Medical Examiner's Office, which acts as a consulting medical examiner's office for approximately 155 of the 159 counties for the state of Georgia.
And how long have you been a medical examiner in the state of Georgia?
Since 1994.
And do you have any estimation as to how many autopsies you performed during that time?
It's probably just over 10,000.
And if you could just tell the jury briefly your educational and training,
Sure.
Educational background and training.
As I said, I'm a physician licensed to practice medicine in Georgia. I have a current Georgia medical license, and I've had that since 1993. My medical background is that I obtained my medical degree at the University of Auckland in New Zealand, and that's from 1979 to 1984. After that, I practiced primary care and emergency medicine for a number of years prior to coming to the United States in 1992 to practice, or to become a pathologist, specialist pathologist. And a pathologist is a physician who assists clinical physicians in the diagnosis and management of disease processes. And I did that at Emory University Hospitals from 1992 to 1995. And after that, I did 1 year of forensic pathology training at the Fulton County Medical Examiner's Office. And since that time, I've practiced full-time as a forensic pathologist in the state of Georgia for Fulton County, DeKalb County, and also for the state.
And were you a medical examiner for DeKalb County's Office of Medical Examiner in April of 2019?
Yes.
And as part of that role, did you have occasion to investigate the death of Juanita Lakeisha Frazier?
Yes.
And let me show you what we've marked as Defendant's Exhibit 3 and ask you if you can please take a look at that packet of pages. Is that the medical examiner's inquiry to include the autopsy report and investigator notes?
Yes, it is.
And on the very first page, under certification by medical examiner, is that your signature?
Yes, it is.
And what was your role specifically as it relates to Ms. Frazier?
To perform an autopsy and determine the cause and manner of death in the instance of Ms. Frazier.
Were you able to determine her cause of death?
Yes.
And what was that?
It was a gunshot of the torso, and the torso being the chest, abdomen, essentially the trunk of the body, if you will.
Did you understand let me back up. Did someone from the medical examiner's office go out and investigate the scene and retrieve Ms. Frazier for the medical examiner's office?
Yes.
And did you have information prior to performing your autopsy that she had been found already deceased in a bed?
Yes.
And when did you first observe Ms. Frazier?
That would have been on the morning of Tuesday, April 9th, 2019.
Is that when you performed the autopsy?
Yes.
And I noticed, just so that the jury knows, as you're flipping through documents, you're looking at Defendant's Exhibit 3, which includes the inquiry, autopsy report, and the investigator notes. Is that correct?
Yes, it does.
All right. And generally, as to Ms. Frazier's body, did you find anything noteworthy?
Yes.
And what was that?
She died as a result of a gunshot.
I think you said earlier to the torso.
Yes.
Can you describe more specifically where the injury was?
Yes. The bullet wound, or the bullet, entered the body in the left upper back, passed through the body, and exited the right front, at the level of the right breast of her body. She sustained lethal injuries as a result of that gunshot, and also recovered at the time of the autopsy was a bullet that was in the clothing that she was wearing at the time.
Did you make any observations as to the bullet?
I think I describe it in very broad terms, since I'm not an expert in firearms. It was a minimally deformed, fully jacketed, medium caliber bullet, which was forwarded for examination as required.
And is it part of the medical examiner's office protocol when retrieving the body of a crime victim to put the hands in bags?
Sometimes, yes.
Okay, was that done here?
Refresh my memories. Yes, the hands had been placed within secured paper bags.
Okay, and why is that done?
Usually it's part of medical examiner investigators' training to do that in order to preserve any potential evidence which may be on the hands, which could be lost in the movement of the body from the scene to the medical examiner's office.
And are those bags removed during the course of an autopsy and the hands examined by the medical examiner?
Yes.
And did you do so here?
Yes.
Did you make any findings at all in relation to her hands?
No, I just noted that all digits were accounted for, both on the hands and the feet. And there were no injuries, I noted.
And did you determine that she died as a result of a single gunshot wound?
Yes.
And you described earlier the path of the bullet. Can you just describe where it entered, what it passed through, and where it exited specifically?
Sure. The bullet passed through the tissues of the upper left back, and it entered the chest cavity, the left chest cavity, adjacent to the spinal column. It passed through the upper lobe of the left lung, which again is in the left chest cavity, through what I call was termed the thoracic aorta, which is the large vessel which exits the heart, provides oxygenated blood to the body, and then exited the front of the body.
And the aorta, is that the primary artery that comes off of the heart to provide blood to the rest of the body?
Yes, it is.
And if one has a laceration of the aorta through a gunshot wound such as this, is that a bad situation?
Yes, it would require emergent, almost urgent and emergent therapeutic intervention to prevent catastrophic internal bleeding as a result of the defect in the aorta and the continual activity, pumping action of the heart.
Does the aorta have any pain receptors?
Not that I know of, no. It has autonomic nerves, but no pain nerves per se.
And you said that the bullet also went through the left lung, is that correct?
Correct.
And would there be any pain associated with the bullet passing through the left lung?
No.
Did the bullet pass through the intercostal space of her ribs?
Yes.
Can you explain to the jury what that means?
That's the space between the ribs. It's occupied by some skeletal muscle, some fibrous connective tissue, and it essentially is the tissue separating adjacent ribs.
Did it also exit between ribs?
Yes.
As a result, were any bones affected by the gunshot?
No, not that I could see with the naked eye.
And did you see any evidence of powder burn or stippling on the gunshot entrance to her body?
No, I did not.
What is the significance of the lack of that finding?
What counsel's referring to is what we call gunshot residue, which is part of the material that comes out of the muzzle of a gun when it's discharged. It primarily consists of soot as a result of the combustion of the gunpowder, unburnt and partially burnt gunpowder particles, which are minute, but nonetheless are solid objects that can travel a certain distance once they exit the muzzle of the gun. So if you just think of a discharge of a gun as being an explosion within a controlled explosion within the gun, which propels the bullet and gunshot residue out of the gun muzzle, the bullet obviously will travel many hundreds of feet, depending on the type of firearm, but the gunshot residue will only travel in the order of inches to maybe a few feet. So if I don't see any gunshot residue on a target, and the targets that I look at obviously are human bodies, since I examine human bodies, it's not possible for me to give an opinion as to the distance of the muzzle of the gun to that particular individual body at the time it was discharged.
Are you able to say that it was more than a couple of feet?
Well, in this instance, I would. I think there was other evidence related to the case which led me to feel confident that this is what we call an indeterminate or distant range gunshot wound.
And as you were describing her injuries, as part of the examination that you performed, did you also look at the rest of her body?
Yes.
Other than the gunshot wound and the damage to the internal organs that we discussed, did you find any other significant findings on any other parts of her body?
Not in terms of determining the cause and manner of death. There appeared to be some areas of she had a skin grafting, a rectangular shape skin grafting harvesting site on her left thigh. I don't know what that was related to in the past, but she had no other natural disease or injuries that I would expect to have caused or contributed to her death.
And it has been admitted in the case that Ms. Frazier was asleep at the time the bullet struck her body. So I want you to assume that.
Yes.
If you assume she was asleep in bed at the time that she was shot, do you believe she would have experienced any conscious pain and suffering?
No, I do not.
And can you describe how someone can be shot while they're asleep and not have any pain and suffering?
First of all, sleep, if indeed Ms. Frazier was asleep, is a state of unconsciousness. So if she is unconscious, to say that she had conscious pain and suffering is a little bit of a contradiction in terms. I have no reason to believe, first of all, the bullet did not strike any objects that, in my opinion, in the body other than the skin surface, which would have caused any pain. And whilst there is a sensation of a projectile entering the body through the skin surface, as described by people who have survived gunshot wounds, it's seldom described as painful, and I don't believe that the bullet entering or exiting Ms. Fraser's body awoke her at all, because there's no evidence that she moved at all after she'd been shot. So once the bullet's inside the body, it passes, did not hit any bones. Again, bone is well innervated, or innervated, I should say, not innervated, innervated. And bullets striking bones are painful because they tend to fracture those bones. The lung, the aorta don't have pain receptors, which would result in pain. And I feel as if there had been any pain that would have awoken Ms. Fraser, she had sufficient time to react to that pain and perhaps move to some degree. Perhaps realize that she had sustained an injury, if she was able to, coming out of sleep abruptly, and perhaps had moved around, perhaps made some sort of attempt to seek help.
And have you seen photos of the scene?
Yes.
Did you, in observing those photos, see anything that would indicate that she moved to any extent after the gunshot wound?
Not that I saw. There was the blood that was at the scene seemed to be confined to the area where she was lying.
Did you send off blood from her body to be tested for drugs?
I usually send, in all cases, for toxicology, usually alcohol and a basic toxicology, which I think in this instance might have been just...
I'm showing you what we've marked as Defendant's Exhibit 4.
I think I've seen this previously.
And would this report have, or would you have been the person to make the call to send off her blood for testing for drugs and alcohol?
Yes.
And what do these results show?
The alcohol result is for the blood that I sent off was negative, and the drugs, and in this instance they probably only tested for cocaine and amphetamines, showed that there was both cocaine and benzoylecgonine, which is the metabolite of cocaine, in her blood.
Are all of the opinions which you've discussed today provided to a reasonable degree of medical certainty?
Yes.
This case involves, and I'm going to call her Kisha because that's what her family called her and that's what I know her as.
Right.
But this case involved a woman named Kisha Fraser who was killed on April 6, 2019. And you determined that she was killed by a gunshot, correct?
Yes.
When you get a case like this, is this one of the cases that you're looking towards it with a criminal kind of investigative eye when someone's killed by a gun?
I think by definition, yes.
In terms of timing, she was killed the morning of April 6th, right?
Yes.
And then on the 6th, she was taken from the scene and brought for an autopsy.
Yes.
And then you performed the autopsy on April 9th.
Yes.
And then her family was told about her death on the 11th.
I don't know about that. I have a record here of the medical examiner investigator saying that on Thursday, April 11th, 2019 at 10:45 hours, investigator Richard Bowen, who was investigator at the time at the DeKalb County Medical Examiner's office, met with Ms. Mildred Collins Williams, who's Ms. Fraser's mother, and provided 2 lab photographs of Ms. Fraser. Ms. Williams confirmed that the photos were of her daughter, Tijuana Fraser, with a date of birth, provided Ms. Williams a body release form and procedures for obtaining a funeral home. There's no mention here about discussion with the family as to the cause of death, so I don't know when the family found out that she died.
Okay. But on the 11th is when they came and confirmed that was Kisha Fraser by photos and by confirmation of a family member, right?
That was, yes, my understanding.
Okay. As part of your process, do you have a hand in creating the death certificate?
Yes.
Do you create what's called a medical examiner's inquiry?
Well, that's my autopsy report. That's how the DeKalb County medical examiner's office preface their autopsy reports.
Okay, so in an autopsy report, usually the first page is the medical examiner's inquiry, followed by what's titled the autopsy report.
Yes.
And you have that in front of you right now, sir?
Yes.
Oftentimes you do Oftentimes you do toxicology exams or results, and you have those in front of you as well from this case?
Yes.
And in this case, there was a drug and an alcohol test, correct?
Yes.
All right, I want to take you to April 6th. There's a medical examiner's investigator named Mr. Minter. Correct?
Yes.
What is a medical examiner's investigator?
That's an individual that is charged with actually performing they do a variety of things. I think the most complete description would be that a medical examiner investigator is qualified to receive information from law enforcement or from hospital staff relating to the death of an individual and to undertake an investigation of that death from the point of view of gathering information about the decedent, oftentimes visiting the scene where the decedent died, and essentially being the pathologist's, I guess, eyes and ears at the scene, given that, we pathologists can't go or attend all death scenes. And at the DeKalb County Medical Examiner's Office, the majority of the investigators have a law enforcement background, either retired police officers or have some sort of law enforcement background.
And when Investigator Minter went to the scene on April 6th, he took photos of the crime scene. I'm going to hand you a stack of photos here, and if you'll flip through those and confirm for me that those are the photos that Investigator Minter took.
I don't know. I know he took photographs, but also I know that DeKalb County Police will take photographs. So I don't know whether this is all medical examiner photos or a combination of crime scene, DeKalb County crime scene photos. So because there's no markers here.
Okay,
In fact, this is actually DeKalb County crime scene.
Okay. So those photos that are in front of you, have you ever seen those before?
I may have seen some of them. I know that I saw the DeKalb County Medical Examiner's photographs of the scene.
Okay. Can you tell us whether you would have used those specific photos you have in front of you to inform you as you performed your autopsy?
These specific photos?
Yes, sir.
I don't know.
Okay, that's fine.
I know that I reviewed photographs of the scene. I don't know whether they were these specific photographs because I don't know who took those photographs. I believe probably crime scene from DeKalb County Police.
Understood. So when you performed your autopsy on April 9th, you went essentially through each part of Miss Frazier's body to determine if something was, for lack of a better word, wrong that could have caused her to die, right? Other than the gunshot.
Correct.
All right, so I think we can do this quickly, head to toe. Were there any abnormalities or problems with anything in her head, her brain, anything connected to her head?
No.
What about her, other than the gunshot, what about any of her internal organs?
No, she was appeared to be an otherwise healthy individual with no natural disease processes.
All right, you jumped ahead, and that's great. So absent her being shot, she was a healthy person.
Yes, correct.
All right, in terms of the bullet entered her back, correct?
Yes.
And that was on the left side of her body?
Yes.
And it went out her chest?
Yes.
The bullet punctured her aorta and her left lung, correct?
Yes.
And based on what you saw with the naked eye, you didn't see it hit anything else?
Other than the soft tissues related to the intercostal spaces between the ribs and the skin.
Can you tell me what conscious pain and suffering is?
Conscious pain and suffering, to my understanding, would be that, however brief, there is a recognition via complex neural signals of pain. And there are pain receptors in the body that are charged with, I guess, recognizing, I suppose I'm anthropomorphizing a nerve, but recognizing that there is an insult to a particular part of the body and it is fed into the complex areas of the brain, and it is interpreted by human bodies as pain or something to be experienced and or avoided.
So it's the feeling that a person would have that they have a sensation of pain.
Yes.
Okay. We can agree that she had physical pain caused by the bullet perforating or hitting her skin, correct?
Objection, misstates testimony.
Right, sir?
The answer to that is I don't know, because I've heard from a number of people that have survived gunshot wounds that they didn't even know that they'd been shot until they saw that they were bleeding. And again, I think that I would agree that the impact of a bullet passing through the skin at several hundred feet per second, which is what most handgun bullets are traveling at, may cause a perception of something. Now, I don't know whether it's pain or not, but there are pain receptors and pressure receptors in the skin, and that would be a split-second sensation. And it's my belief that if there was sufficient pain as a result of that gunshot wound, that the decedent in this instance, who I believe was asleep and hence unconscious, would have woken up.
So we can agree that there was a perception of pain in this instance because of the bullet perforating the skin.
I don't know about perception of pain. There would have been impulses passing through the body that may have been recognized as pain if the person was conscious.
Do you remember being deposed before in this case?
I do.
You were deposed a year ago tomorrow. Do you remember sitting and doing that deposition?
Vaguely.
You were under oath when you gave that deposition, correct?
Yes.
And you're under oath now?
Yes.
Have you done anything between that deposition and this deposition to learn anything new or change or modify your investigation anyway?
Of this case?
Yes.
No.
You were asked in your prior deposition, quote, the question was, you said the only perception of pain in this instance would have been the perforation of the skin, you believe. Answer, yes.
Yes, I agree with that.
You also said, the only pain in this instance, actual perception of pain, which would probably, and I'll read this again because I can't read, so forgive me. You also said in that deposition, the only pain in this instance, actual perception of pain, would probably be the instantaneous perforation of the skin surfaces by the bullet.
I should qualify that by saying if the patient was conscious.
So you're changing your testimony from a year ago.
No, not really. I'm qualifying it.
Qualification isn't a change to you?
A qualification is essentially elaborating to make it clearer. Essentially, I think my opinion is that Ms. Fraser was unconscious, i.e. asleep at the time that this gunshot was sustained. If she had been conscious, there may have been a perception of pain or discomfort with the bullet entering the body.
Let's talk about her being asleep. You say that being asleep is the same as being unconscious, correct?
Yes.
The only difference is the depth of unconsciousness.
I would agree with that, yes.
Sleep, you think, is similar to anesthesia.
Somewhat, yes. But I'm not an anesthesiologist.
You said at your prior deposition, quote, sleep is very similar to, I suppose, anesthesia, if you will. So do we agree sleep is similar to anesthesia?
Similar, yes.
When someone, and I know we use the term that somebody's being put to sleep or they're going to sleep for anesthesia oftentimes, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir.
I don't mean to be rude, I just have to get a verbal answer. But when people are given medical procedures and are going under for a medical procedure and they're given anesthesia, they're almost always also given pain medicine, true, correct, right?
Yes.
And that's to dull the pain because you can still feel pain when you're under anesthesia, when you're asleep.
I don't think I'm qualified to talk about that.
Okay.
Probably better addressed with an anesthesiologist.
when you are asleep, you are still responsive to pain, right?
I think if the stimulus is sufficient, yes, and that response to pain would probably be waking up.
And your muscles are not completely relaxed when you're asleep, correct?
I don't know.
Okay. At your prior deposition, you testified, quote, obviously, when you're asleep, you will be responsive to pain and your muscles are not completely relaxed. Do you agree with that statement that you made then? Do you agree with it now?
Can you read it to me again?
Sure. You said, obviously, when you're asleep, you will be responsive to pain and your muscles are not completely relaxed.
Yeah, you'll be responsive to pain if the stimulus is sufficient
You're adding
to wake you up.
You're adding another qualification a year later, correct?
I don't know.
Okay.
Objection argumentative.
Are you adding another qualification to your testimony from a year ago?
I don't know.
Do you agree with your testimony from a year ago?
Yes.
As you said it then?
Yes.
Without any qualifications?
Oh, I can qualify if you'd like.
I'm asking you, sir, do you need to qualify your testimony or was it 100% accurate a year ago?
Objection
100%,
argumentative.
I'm not sure whether it's 100% or 99% or 95%.
Okay. Now, you testified that Miss Frazier was asleep when, and we've all agreed here that she was asleep when the bullet entered her, but you don't believe she ever woke up.
No,
No, are you agreeing with me or disagreeing?
I don't think she woke up.
Okay. And therefore she didn't move after she was shot by the bullet.
I do not believe so, no.
And what is that based on, the fact that she didn't move? What's your opinion based on?
First of all, the blood that was there at the scene, but I think the most compelling thing would be if she had moved, I don't think the bullet would still have been lodged in the clothing in the way it would have been.
You mentioned the blood. What about the blood?
Well, it was all in one spot. There was no evidence that she had, blood was transferred beyond where the body was.
And the blood would have been under her?
It depends which part of the body started bleeding. It could have been from the back or the front.
This sounds maybe like a silly question. Does gravity make blood go down if it's rolling off your body?
It should do, yes.
Okay. And in this case, she doesn't appear to have been, not only did she not appear to move after the bullet, but you don't believe she was moved before the investigators came, right?
I don't think so, but you'd have to ask the investigators that question.
Will you flip to the last page of this last picture? It has a red tab for you. Had Miss Frazier's body been moved at this point?
I don't know.
You
Maybe.
Okay, you see the pool of blood on the
Yes.
left there, correct?
Yes.
And that's not connected to her body. Gravity wouldn't have brought blood like that, right?
Well, I can't see whether there's blood that it may have been just transferred by the soaking of the blood through the mattress, but it's not uncommon for individuals, if they're found, perhaps to be moved, the body to be moved to some degree. So I don't know what the people that found Miss Frazier did with her when they first discovered the body.
Okay. So I'm going to show you, if you'll flip, you'll see in that packet, you'll see red numbers and words. I want you to flip to in red, the photo that ends in 58. So they're all numbered, so I want you to go to the one that ends in 58.
What's the full number on that one?
It's 2058. Are you there, sir?
Yes.
Can you tell from that photo if she had been moved?
Well, she may have. I mean, I can see there's, it's hard to tell again because there's a concentration of blood there and what appears to be a smaller concentration of blood there. So she may very well have been moved a short distance at the time the body was found.
Sir, given this photo, isn't it possible that she moved while she was still alive?
Objection calls for speculation.
You can still answer.
She may have.
All right, so sitting here today, she may have moved after being shot, correct?
Same
Yes.
objection.
She may have.
And if she moved, then there'd be conscious pain and suffering, right?
Same objection.
No, because the bullet had already passed through her body at that point in time.
Well, sir, let's talk about how someone dies after a bullet flies through their body and hits their aorta and their left lung. My understanding from your testimony a year ago is that The bullet strikes the left lung and it collapses the left lung, correct?
To some degree, yes.
It depends on how big the hole is and how that depends on how much, let me ask it this way. Depending on how large the hole is, that affects how much the lung collapses.
You know, I don't know, because very small holes can lead to major collapse of the lungs, and in my experience, I've seen individuals that have had large gunshot wounds where the lungs are still relatively inflated.
So her left lung collapsed to some degree.
Yes.
And the right lung is still working.
Yes.
And her heart's still working.
Yes.
Even though the aorta, which is what brings the blood out of the heart, has been perforated.
Yeah.
So her heart's still pumping blood. Her right lung is still working. Her left lung might be working to some degree, right?
Yes.
And she's still trying to breathe.
Yes.
And it takes her minutes to die.
Yes, I don't know exactly how long, but I think minutes is fair.
And all she is asleep, right?
Yes.
So her left lung is collapsed, her right lung is working, blood is pumping into her chest cavity, right?
Yes.
2.5 liters of blood.
Yes.
And blood is pooling onto the bed that we see in those photos.
Yeah, I don't know how much. I mean, it may just be 10, 15 mils of blood. It's hard to tell based on that.
And this goes on for minutes.
Yeah, that's minutes being sort of not 10, 15, 20 minutes, probably in order of probably less than 5 minutes.
And during that time, you don't think she wakes up?
I do not know.
You don't think she gasps for breath knowing that something was wrong? Maybe not knowing that she had been shot, but knowing something was wrong.
I don't see any evidence at the scene that, for example, gasping may lead to expectoration of blood. And I don't see any of that from the photographs there. Like I say, I just feel as if she had moved with any purpose at all, i.e. conscious purpose. I think the bullet probably would have moved away from the body.
So for those minutes, while she can't breathe, as the way you and I are right now, do you know what she was thinking, if anything?
I think she was unconscious the entire time.
And if she was conscious, though, she would have a sense of impending doom. She would know something is wrong.
Objection calls
She
for
may do,
speculation.
yes. She may do, yes.
And oftentimes when people have a sense of impending doom, they go into shock.
No, I wouldn't agree with that.
And then the body doesn't start to shut down?
Well, it depends what your definition of shock might be different from mine. So we'd have to talk about what shock. Shock to me is the result of organs starting to dysfunction as a result of blood loss.
Well, a year ago you said, and then obviously, depending on how rapid the bleeding is, there may be a perception of impending doom, if you will, because you start going into shock and your body starts to shut down.
Yeah, but that's only if you're conscious.
Right. And my question is, if she was conscious, that's what she would have experienced.
She may have, yes.
If the jury says that, with respect, they don't agree with your testimony,
Right.
I want to make sure they understand what she would have experienced.
Yes, I would not argue with that. But
Okay.
like I say, if the jury disagrees that she was unconscious, that's perfectly fine. I don't have any problem with that interpretation of what was going on if she was conscious.
Yeah. And can you tell us for a certainty that at no point in time she did not wake up?
I can't tell you anything with absolute certainty, no.
You mentioned that something about moving with purpose, that if she knew what was going on or knew something was wrong, you would have expected her to move with purpose, right?
Yes.
Can we agree, and you can flip through the photos, I'll tell you a couple page numbers to kind of guide you through this. If you go to 2043, ending in 43,
Yes.
can we agree that her body is positioned in that her hands are facing towards off the bed? They're trying to they're towards the side of the bed. Let's put it that way.
Yes.
Okay. You see a marking in number marking for a yellow little thing that says number 1. I guess the police leave those things around.
Yes.
Do you know what number 1 is marking? And if you don't, you can flip to page.
Probably the cellular telephone.
If you go to page 2029, let's do that. Yes, sir. Can we agree that number 1 is marking a cell phone?
Yes.
Can we agree if she did move after being shot, that would lend itself to the conclusion that there was conscious pain and suffering?
No.
So your testimony is even if she moved, you don't think there was conscious pain and suffering?
Well, people move while they're asleep.
Well, I'm talking about after she is shot. Bullet goes through, bullet comes out. She is now hemorrhaging blood. Her lung is collapsed. She's pooling blood in her chest. If she moves at all during that time, does that lead you to conclude it's more likely than not that she did experience pain?
No.
Okay. So what would it have taken for her to show you that she experienced pain? If moving is not enough, if a pool of blood away from her body is not enough, what would have been enough?
Objection calls for speculation.
I think if the sequence of events, for example, if the bullet had struck a rib or exited via the breastbone or had struck the spinal column, where I know that there are pain receptors in the bone there, and that if she had woken up because of that pain and then had, even if she was half asleep and confused, she would know that there was something wrong because of the symptoms you've described, which would have been a conscious shortness of breath, impending doom, if you will, because of the blood pooling in her chest. I feel, for example, she may have moved more off the bed, for example, maybe moved towards the cellular telephone to try and seek, call somebody, or if there's somebody in the house, call out to that person. I don't know whether she was in the house by herself or not.
So you said earlier it was possible that she did move based on the photos, but you're still saying she didn't move enough for you to think that she experienced pain.
Well, I don't know what I'm not sure whether she moved, the body moved away from that pool of blood or was moved when she was found. Somebody is going in there, for example, saying, Miss Fraser, wake up, and then moving the body, or touching her and moving the body. She's been moved by the looks of things, maybe several inches.
So it looks to you like she was moved after she was shot, correct?
That would be my opinion. I think the body has been moved after she was shot by somebody who discovered the body. Maybe just an attempt to sort of wake her up, or, I mean, she hasn't been moved to the floor in an attempt to provide cardiopulmonary resuscitation or anything like that. She looks like she's in a sleeping position on the bed.
Sir, a year ago, you were asked, question, do you know if the body had been moved at all? And your answer then was, I don't think it was moved purposely from one room to another, and I don't know whether the body had been moved. Is that still your testimony today?
Yeah, I don't know for sure whether the body had been moved. I know it hasn't been moved from one room to another, but I don't know to this day whether somebody reached over and moved her body a few inches.
And you don't know if she moved her own body?
She may have, but we all move while we're asleep.
But I'm talking about after the bullet went through her. You think it's possible that she gets shot, she's hemorrhaging blood, blood's pooling in her chest cavity, her lung is failing, her whole body is shutting down, and she moved while still being asleep?
I'm just not sure that it was a conscious movement, a consciousness of being injured, fatally injured, of experiencing pain or discomfort.
And you're not sure it wasn't a conscious movement?
No, I'm not.
I have no further questions.